Right, so grabbing protesters for calling out Labour's pro-Israel agenda and bundling them out, along with the suspension of a delegate from a socialist society for the crime of being pro-Palestinian, and preventing him from then representing what is also a Labour affiliate and voting on their behalf, is what Starmer's Labour is all about now, apparently. An anti-democratic body that refuses to listen, resorts to violence, and is certainly supporting that and its inaction in the Middle East. Goodness knows why so many are terrified of what this Starmer-led regime has got coming down the line when their conduct, what they support abroad and what they are against here domestically, was defined yesterday in 2 incidents by violence. Supporting Israel, still arming them and accepting no protest, be it the more widely reported incident of the protesters interrupting Rachel Reeves' speech, or the virtually completely underreported incident of the delegate who has now been suspended from Labour for doing no more than wearing a Palestinian flag pin badge, has in one instance ended in physical violence, and the other, I would argue, was an act of political violence. See if you agree or no.
Competence, their dishonesty and their rule breaking. This is a changed Labour Party, a Labour Party that represents working people, not a party of protest.
There was this outbreak of dissent too. The heaviest technique for involuntary departure, grab around the neck and get him out. His partner in protest, given an encounter with the wall for good measure. An organisation called the Climate Resistance Group said it was its members bundled out the back door.
Move away now. Move away.
This is a changed Labour Party, a Labour Party that represents working people, not a party of protest.
Right, so that was a couple of clips cut together there of Rachel Reeves' speech from yesterday at Labour conference. But if there's an image to define Labour under Starmer these days, then a kid getting grabbed by the throat by a security lackey must be it. This is Labour now in so many ways, be it the attacks on people in Britain here domestically through cuts already announced and more still expected to come in next month's budget, and the ongoing support for the genocidal regime of Israel, now launching what appears to be certain war against Lebanon on top of what it has already done and continues to do in Gaza. Starmer's Labour has an awful lot of people by the throat. It was Rachel Reeves' keynote speech that was interrupted in that clip by members of Climate Resistance who were demanding Labour stop backing polluters and stop selling arms to Israel. The young chap grabbed by the throat quite vocally saying to her, "I thought we voted for change, Rachel." You and a lot of people thought that, sunshine. It's not proven to be the case though, has it? But where then being it quite violently escorted from the main audience hall by chokehold was one thing. That is all most people saw of the incident, though uncustomarily for the BBC, they showed what actually happened backstage afterwards that was even worse. And people are saying the 2 activists thrown out should actually report the incident to the police now. Well, one was held in a chokehold, the other was bashed into a wall on his way out, which looked deliberate to me. It did not appear to be as a result of any struggling on the part of the protester, with one jumped up madam outside demanding those filming move away. Sorry, free country, public space outside. Still at this moment in time, however. We see what Starmer does as time goes on. But having said all that, however, the 2 activists were then arrested, questioned for about half an hour before being driven away from the venue and de-arrested. Owen Jones happened to speak to one of them later on and revealed the extent of their injuries in a tweet saying, "I just spoke to the young protester who was violently manhandled out of Labour conference for opposing arming Israel's genocide. He was aggressively grabbed by the neck, leaving these red marks. When he said free Palestine, the officer said, 'You weasel.'" The photos themselves show red marks on the chokehold activist's neck that actually looked like they'd been bleeding at one point, and his wrists were red raw from the cuffs. But I don't know if that was due to having been cuffed by security or the police, but it warrants following up. It does weirdly, having been arrested themselves by the police, warrant, I suppose, a police complaint for assault. Any security guard worth their salt, worth their SIA licence, knows not to grab anyone by the neck. It's more than their job is worth. So who were these jumped up thugs Labour were employing for security? Just because they're security does not give them licence to do this. But then there's the other story to talk about, which has gone vastly unreported, because this wasn't the only ejection that happened at Labour conference yesterday, and this one did not involve any disruption at all. Of all the affiliate bodies that the Labour Party has, surprisingly, there is only one education affiliate of them entirely for the Labour Party. This is the Socialist Educational Association, the SEA. Being an affiliate body, though, only Labour members can join them. And they protest, as you might imagine, for a fairer education system, less driven by Tory cuts and testing regimes, and against the academisation programme, which has basically been privatising our schools. As an affiliate body, a group of Labour members, they have voting rights at Labour conference. The only educational body affiliated with the party to even have that privilege even. So the fact their delegate, James Whiting, who also happens to be the SEA's General Secretary, got thrown out as well, means this affiliate group and all of its Labour members are now going unrepresented at what remains of Labour conference. But not only was their delegate thrown out of conference, his membership has been suspended as well. So what could he possibly have done to earn such heavy-handed treatment? He wore a Free Palestine pin badge and a keffiyeh. You have to remember that pro-Palestine voices actually do have a voice at Labour conference. They are allowed. There is Labour Friends of Palestine in the Middle East, after all. There is the annual Palestine reception at Labour conference, which was held last night, as it happens. Starmer sent Angela Rayner to it to try and presumably placate furious members appalled at Labour's ongoing support for Israel. But good luck with that when a guy who comes clearly showing support for Palestine gets thrown out for it. Whiting has, as you might have imagined, written to SEA members about what happened in an email fully reproduced in an exclusive by Squawkbox. But here's an excerpt detailing what happened to him. This is my story. As I explained earlier, I was not allocated a seat at the conference, and I had not really been in the main hall till this afternoon, where I thought I should vote on rule changes. After walking around trying to find a seat and being moved on by people saying someone was sitting there for 10 minutes, I went to speak to an accessibility steward who took me to the front of the SOC Socialist Society section to a reserve section, the first seat of which had no reserve sign on it. He said, sit there and if anyone comes, move. So I sat down and started to pull out your cards, ready to vote. A guy in a suit and ginger beard came up to me and said, you can't sit there. I said I would move if anyone needed it and showed my pass without seat number. He continued to tell me to move. And at this point I probably should have succumbed, but I said, where to? He explained I had been put there by a steward. He said, you need to come with me for a chat. I knew at this point he had probably already decided his course of action. I had on a small Free Palestine badge and a keffiyeh. I stayed. 10 minutes later, a posse arrived. They escorted me out of the conference. I was accused of being aggressive. I argued, sure, but did not swear or threaten. The posse consisted of security, the police, and the ginger guy who pronounced sentence on the spot. We are expelling you from the conference and suspending you from the party from now. I was then asked to go into a small room so as not to create a fuss, where I had a pleasant conversation with two police officers who I have to say remained entirely neutral distance themselves from Labour and were polite at all times. I was then let out of a side door so the media did not see me being led out. Stalin-esque is the word that springs to mind here. Utter dismissal of the representation rights of Labour members affiliated to the SEA, exactly what his crime is that has prompted whoever the jumped-up pipsqueak with the ginger beard to suspend his membership and expel him from conference was, seems to just rest on the fact he wore a Free Palestine badge and a keffiyeh, which last time I looked, and especially given Palestine Events Act conference still went on, cannot possibly be against Labour rules or the law just yet. So the police involvement was a novelty as well. Whiting did say he suspected where he had been sat there might have been a concern that he was planning on storming the stage, but there's a burden of proof to be made upon that, and his suspension and eject from conference has still happened without that. Don't match up. Are Labour under Starmer so terrified of dissent? Because if so, you might want to start delivering on some of that change you all promised instead of continuing with the same Tory visionless dross combined with an authoritarian streak a mile wide, and start doing what you said you were going to do to win people's votes over. This is frankly just one more scandal, one more of a long list of scandals amid a conference that's been dominated by them. The scale of outrageous, self-serving conduct by Starmeroid MPs has beggared belief, but a roundup of some of the worst examples to come to light over just the last couple of days can be found in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch if so inclined, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next feed. Cheers folks.